What's up, YouTube? I'm going to be making my first video regarding a headlight conversion on a Mazda truck, B series, late 80s, early 90s. I was browsing around the internet for a couple days when I realized there's only a couple tutorials and forums, and one YouTube video that I watched a couple times before I decided to go ahead and give this a shot. It was pretty basic. It covered cutting and fitting and things like that. It left a lot of questions unanswered in regards to the wiring and a couple of the other questions that I noticed could have been addressed when I finished the installation. The first one being was this socket that comes supplied with these Ranger headlights. I got two of them for $40 on Amazon with bulbs supplied and sockets. This is the original socket for the turn marker that came with the assembly. My first issue when I was mounting up the headlight, I noticed there's very limited clearance for that socket, which is this one. So what I did is I went down to the parts store and I picked this one up. It's essentially the same thing as this, but it's at a 90-degree angle. So if you can see, it actually won't come in contact with the frame there. It'll come out to the side, makes it a little easier, makes life a whole lot better. I went ahead and wired this up when I realized, like, you know what, maybe I could make my own video and see if I get hits or anything like that. So this one's not completely finished. I went ahead and did this side. I'm going to go ahead and teach you how to do that side. Mind you, I'm not an electrical engineer. Do this at your own risk. My wiring isn't completely finished for this side. I'm going to get some of the little terminals with an O on them that you slide the wire into, and then you crimp it. That way I can bolt it there and make a good clean contact on the ground. I went ahead and wired this turn signal to the turn signal down here, and I wired the power for the parking lamp to the other side, because that one doesn't turn. It's not a turn signal, it's just a parking lamp. I wanted it to be on when I had my parking lamps on, and I wanted it to turn when I turn my turn signal on. I'll go ahead and show you guys a little preview. Let's see, where's the key at? Let me see if I think I'm gonna left the key in there. Okay, so it's 1989. I did the cluster swap on it. Originally this was a miles per hour only truck. It didn't have the RPM, so I went to the junkyard, picked the cluster up, went ahead and wired that. I'd like to see my RPMs. So let's see, let's turn first the headlamp. And, should be on. Okay, so as you can see, well, you can't really see, but so I have power here. This one's on. This one's on. This one's actually dim, but that's okay because it's a parking light. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the signal on. Fog lights are wired independently. I have a kill switch for these, and I'll show you. That's another story. I mounted that one flush here. All these little sockets. I plan on utilizing all of them eventually, so let's go ahead and turn the signal on. So as you can see, that one's turning in conjunction with the turn signal. You could wire it backwards, the polarity, and what that'll do is when this one turns off, that one turns on. When that one turns on, that one turns off. But that's a whole nother story. We're not going to worry about that. So I went ahead and wired everything. This is the way I want it to, at least. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to achieve those results on this side. I was about halfway through when I realized, hey, you know what, somebody might benefit from this. I know there's a lack of videos. I mean, everybody has a way to interpret methods. And I mean, you know, some people just learn better from others. And all right, let's go ahead and do this. Normally I would recommend taking the battery off. That's the wise thing to do. At least just unplugging the ground one, but actually that's what you should do. Don't do it my way. I mean, you know, I'm taking the risk, but that's okay, because I mean, if I fry something, I can probably fix it. First thing I'm going to advise you to get is, if you don't have one, is a multimeter. Invaluable tool. It'll help you diagnose damn near everything on a car: sensors, switches, wiring, etc., terminals. Next thing I'm going to advise you get one of these bad boys. If you're planning on owning the truck in the long run, it's invaluable. Pay for itself in repairs. Okay, so the parts I got to achieve a nice uniform finish, when I got a 10-pack of these. Mind you, these are relatively cheap, a couple dollars for a bag of 10. That's a heat shrink tubing with adhesive. I got these bare terminals. You'll notice they don't come with any plastic or molding or anything like that. These are actually cheaper, and I prefer these simply because it gives me the results I want with a cleaner look. And again, that's the socket, the 90-degree you're going to need for this sucker, because when you try and mount it, it's not going to work. And I mean, unless you're willing to cut it, which I wasn't. I actually noticed that the other video that's floating around, he mentioned drilling relatively large holes. I didn't want to do that. What I did was, I got this little file set from Napa. Came with 3 files. I only used 2 for this project. This round one, it's pretty coarse. It worked really well. Went ahead and used it in conjunction with my drill. So I went ahead and drilled a hole, and then you know, any of these holes, actually you can make it into a perfect circle or larger, and it does require a little bit of labor, but it's nothing that'll, you know, break your arm or anything, or make you be out here all day. Any hole you want around that, you simply just in and out. You'll make it larger. It'll give it a nice uniform clean finish. Yeah, and this is for my fog lights. Yeah, and it's not wired how I'd like it to be, but I did it all in a couple minutes. I was in a rush that day. I'm gonna reorganize that. So first I'm gonna get down to the harness. Let's see. This side I took the time to use my multimeter and get everything where I needed it to be. If you notice, for 1989 B2200 5-speed carved engine, what I did was I wired red and white with yellow. The black and red with the blue. Right there it's a little darker because I got the lighter too close to it when shrinking my heat shrink. And of course the black with the black round. And I'm going to show you the process, see if I can mount this up here somewhere where I can use it. And basically what you're going to do after you've identified the other side, man, I hate videos on YouTube that have poor visibility. I was going to originally use my iPhone, but then I realized, hey, you know, I have a camcorder laying around. So what you're going to do is, you can see my bare terminal there. I had already previously crimped it when I realized that I could make the video. I went ahead and bled, there it is. I'll get a little closer. Bled a little bit of the harness in here, make sure it's visible. Then I crimped it with some clippers. You need a special crimping tool, but I mean, I don't really, you know. This would be sufficient for me. Generally, the professional way to do it would be to go ahead and bleed the wire through there and add some solder, but I could do that. I do have the tools, but I'm not going to. I'm just lazy. I went ahead and clipped a little bit of heat shrink tubing, and what you see is, you want to clip more than the size of the terminal, because when you heat it up, it's going to shrink. That should be sufficient to cover both sides. So you're gonna bleed that down. Bleed that down. Whoa, we put in the harness side of the truck. So now we're gonna bleed this in. This is yellow and red and white. So we can see it. Got my clippers. I'm gonna clip it on this side first, then on the other side. Slide it over. Get yourself a lighter. Also, I removed the reservoir tank to add a little bit more space. So I'm going to show you here kind of the beauty of heat shrink. Awkward position. So make sure we move that to the side. So what this does is it'll seal it. A nice weatherproof seal with adhesive. Another pro tip is I should have, but I didn't. Again, it's my truck, you know, my consequences, etc. The proper way to do this is always, anytime you add anything that's aftermarket that didn't come supplied with your vehicle, it is ideal to add an inline fuse to any wiring that you're adding to any vehicle's factory harness. And especially if you're a little inexperienced, I'm going to recommend you go ahead and you spend an extra couple, you know, $2-3 and get an inline fuse. And you could essentially put it anywhere here, preferably the ground. So if you ever have any electrical issue, that'll save your harness. See if I can pull this up. So the last wire I have left here is the black and red and the blue. Mind you, this socket actually came in a 2-pack. Let me get you that packaging. This is the part number for that. It's a 2-pack, 787 and 119. That's this socket. It's 2-pack. It was around $4 or $5. Putting this socket to adapt it to the Ranger's headlights. Our trucks come with this old style connector, which is a little extinct nowadays. You'll notice that I probably left about an inch or two. Reason being, if I ever sell the truck, I'm going to include all this miscellaneous stuff I take off it. It's just an extra bargaining chip for all you that like to throw your parts away or sell them. Everything I ever take off of any of my vehicles I save. Alright, let's get back to this. I apologize for the shaky camera. First time making a video. Let's see. Alright, I'm gonna walk you through this process. Of course, we better hurry up along here. I don't want to take too much time. We gotta show you the wiring for the turn signal. Okay, so there's the black and red. I'll go ahead and grab one of these terminals. Part number for these, 75418, or I'm sorry, 725,418. These are relatively cheap. They're cents on the dollar each. I just decided to buy a box because I'm always doing electrical work on my cars. You know, I just like having abundance whenever I work on someone's car or do anything. Pull one out, put it back in the box. So essentially what I do, I mean, everybody has their own way of doing things. I just bend it a little towards the tip. That just gives me peace of mind knowing that it's going to make a good contact. As you can see, they pop out a little, that's why I bent it. And that just lets me know I'm definitely going to have a good contact. Repeat the process. All you need is the tip of your nail. Actually, this has happened to me before many times, and it was almost going to happen to me again. Before you connect it, you want to ensure that you have the heat shrink. Part number 727648. Doesn't have to be Napa brand, could be anything, but I just got everything from one place. And again, you want to always get a little bit more than you need. You never want to have less. That defeats the purpose. And before you crimp it, go ahead and slide it in. I should have done this before putting the terminal on, to be honest, because now it's gripping the wire. Okay, no big deal. That means we got a good contact, so we'll do it backwards. Put it on this side, and there's not enough space. Okay. And it's no big deal. We'll slide this off. Slide this in. Good rule of thumb, slide 3 pieces in before you get any of the crimping done. It'll make your life easier. You don't want to forget it. I've forgotten many times on many vehicles, but I always have to go back and fix it again. So just a pro tip. Like I said, I'm sure there are plenty of people, everybody has their own methods, their own ways of doing things, but I figure if I can make a video that possibly might resonate better with a couple viewers, then why not? Okay, so then my wire's in there. This one's already bent a little from earlier when I was gonna put it in. And there. So now you're supposed to have a crimping tool for this, but like I said, it's not absolutely necessary. Neither is the solder, but that's the right way to do it. I'm just using this because, like I said, I'm cheap, I'm lazy, and it's working fine. Now after you got this all taken care of, you want to mold any of these wires that are sticking straight up with the contour of the terminal. That's because when you slide the heat shrink over it, it'll pierce it, and that'll defeat the purpose. When it rains or snows or whatever, you'll get liquid in there and possibly short circuit something. So you want to make sure you have an equal amount on both sides. And let's go ahead and shrink that. A little windy here, so let me. Bear in mind that even though these will run off of the vehicle's factory harness, I prefer peace of mind. Like I said earlier, it's not absolutely necessary, but anytime I install aftermarket parts, I always put an inline fuse or something. So this one's ready to go. If I pop it into my other headlamp, the headlight will pop on. But let me show you. Grab that headlamp. Here we have the other one. I'm going to go ahead and lay that one right here. Pop that puller in. So now I'm going to go turn it on and off. So it should be on there. So let's check the high beam now. I can't really see it, but I'm pretty sure it's coming on. But you get the idea. So now we're going to remove that. We just want the headlight sitting there. Alright, now let's continue to the wiring. Okay, the part you've all been wanting to see if you want the setup identical to mine. Going back to my installation that's not finished, reason being that other socket that's at 90 degrees, I had to special order it. That one was about 15 bucks. It should be here in a couple hours. When I go back, I'm gonna go ahead and get these circuit splicers. I'll probably show you actually, you know what, I'll add to the video how to utilize those. So right now, the way I have this wired up, and like I said, after verifying the operation of each wire with my multimeter, this is just my fun multimeter. I actually have another one for when I do work on cars. As you can see, this is one of the ones here. This brown one comes from this socket right here. It's for the middle. That's the low side, if I remember correctly. That's for the parking light. I verified this circuit was for the parking light on the side. So after I get the splicer, I'm gonna connect it with this red and black wire going to the parking light. And this blue one, it actually ran down to the turn signal on the bumper. Same thing. I'm gonna run it. You could leave it like this. I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you're in like in a countryside or anything like that, because the bumps and everything, it'll throw the contacts off, so you'll have flickering lights. It'll just be a mess. Plus, I mean, this is really ghetto. You don't want to leave it like that. I just bled it this way for demonstrative purposes. After I get those line taps or whatever they're called, I'm gonna splice into that green and white one with this blue one, and of course the ground one. That I'm gonna buy a separate terminal with a little circle. You slide the wire into that terminal, then I'm gonna mount it here and just screw it down. Since I used my file when I made those holes, I know that it's gonna be a good clean contact, a good ground. So let's see. Oh, well, I can't really show you the process. I just realized I don't have that socket yet. I'm sorry. That one. I'm waiting for it to come, but it should be here pretty soon. So I generally do a lot of stupid things like this, you know, painting and disassembling and all kinds of random things with my cars. I've been poking at the idea of starting my own channel. I play around with motorcycles too. Depending on how many views this video gets, I might be implied to make a couple more. We'll see. But this is the first part of a two-part video, I suppose. I'm gonna do the wiring on the other one here in a couple hours, and I'll walk you through it. Essentially, we just got the basics down. The reason I got this switch was for my fog lamps. It's the same one I have in my dash, but this one's different because it's got an extra terminal. So I'm gonna wire this one in instead, because it's been 2 or 3 times now that I get off my truck, and since the switch I have in there is not illuminated, I have to go back in because my fog lamps are on. So I'm gonna pop that in. So I'll check back in here in a little bit. I'll include part numbers, price ranges. I don't remember too well, but in the description. Let me know if you have any questions.